Recruiting has got to pick up for UCF, but how many kids do they need from high school to call it a successful class?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Turn us on, turn us up, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Kyle Nash, senior writer, UCFKnightZone.com. On today's show, we're going to check in on Alonza Barnett to talk a little bit about the portal, and then how big does this high school haul have to be in recruiting for UCF to call it a successful class? Let's start at the top. Kyle, the portal has kind of watered down kind of the focus on high school recruiting, but
it seems that way.
Still feel like the way to build a sustainable foundational winner is high school recruiting. You need guys you get in your system, you develop in your system, and you get them young that are untainted by other programs, and they are just truly UCF guys at heart from start to finish. When Malachi Lawrence got drafted, it was one of the things that UCF kind of marketed was like, hey, man, UCF from start to finish. You only do that if you're getting them out of high school here. We're going to talk about the portal in our next segment, man, but let's start with this high school class. UCF has 3 guys in the class right now. Feels like recruiting is dragging. I asked James a couple episodes ago, like, hey, man, at what point will you start to panic maybe about this high school recruiting class? Talk to me. Are the days of pulling in like 25 kids in a high school class over in your mind?
It feels that way depending on who you're talking about right now. And here's where I think UCF might be a little bit unique, okay? Because this opportunity that you're talking about. First of all, I love that you mentioned Malachi and the marketeering that could involve there, and pairing him with Nigel Kelly, having 2 edge rushers in the combine's a big deal. I agree with you 1,000% on that. Where I think the element is, let me lead with this. Give the credit for the recruiting of the high school kids at the quarterback position, right? Put your chips on the table for the one guy that you need for this year to get that patchwork in, and then develop the dudes beneath him. And no, I'm not just saying that to make James Duncan happy as the president of the Kewan Jenkins fan club. I think that's really a good approach to do it. And I make the jokes about the fan club, but James has a great point in how UCF has shoved chips into the table for Alonza and then gone young everywhere else at quarterback. I mean, if we're going to shred them for not having that many comparatively that many high school recruits, we should give them credit where it's due. They're concentrating on developing the most expensive position so they can finance other parts of the house just a bit better. But to your point, Mike, anybody, all the bougie folk out there that watch the NFL know that you need to get the most from your rookies in the draft, so the more expensive players aren't holding you down per se. How is this any different in the college space, Mike, to get these cats from high school so you don't have to pay as much an NIL to veteran dudes to come in off the portal?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the 2026 class, you had 16 kids commit from high school. Now, among we saw some of these guys, we saw some of these guys during the last spring practice that we covered, the open practice. Rocco Marriott, Dante Carr, Alhassan Idrisu, Arthur Lewis, the 4th came in, Noah Mercer came in, Brooks Hall, Tyron Horns, Amon Williams. These are some pretty notable names here. Now, nothing less than a 3-star in this class coming in from high school. We thought that Idrisu would be kind of like the crown jewel, and then they went out and they got Rocco Marriott, and then Tyron Horns committed. 247 has him rated as a 4-star, 172nd nationally, so a top 200 kid for you there. And when you go through the national rankings, he technically would be the crown jewel of the class, but like 16 feels light based on what it used to be. And it feels like a lot of that is a product of the portal and what the portal is today.
Oh yeah, I think that goes without saying, and I'll even add this: maybe different schools also do things a different way, right? Like geographically in Florida, UCF has a ton of competition, and even more than you used to, right? Obviously, the big three are here with Miami, Florida State, and Gainesville, UF, right? Then on top of that, FIU's kind of emerged, right? FAU is in the American now. West Florida. No, wait, there actually is a West Florida that's trying to start a football program. The Cows are involved and they're in the recruiting process. Okay, I'll call them the Bulls and be professional and mention UCF USF such that it is. Cool. But all I say for the above, Mike, is that's all the more competition that exists within the state of Florida. Granted, the advantage to not have to travel as far as good. Orlando has a lot of other things going for it as a recruiting center and a cool place to be. But at day's end, perhaps there's something to be said as an overall team strategy where you're having to battle with more schools in more high-level schools, right? Group of 5 schools just all being all around you, and Power 5, Power 4 schools being all around you. I think there's an element to be said, maybe concentrating on developing younger guys at less expensive positions and then go ahead and paying, air quotes, less money per position to bring in veteran guys. You may not have as many high school recruits by volume, but it's a strategy you could institute. I'm not saying they're doing that, but there's a scenario where that math makes sense.
No matter what, the portal is not going anywhere, Kyle. You're going to have to get your fair share from the portal. There's no second portal window now, so you need to do all that work in the only portal window. But what was the first portal window? Let's get to the break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how much UCF leans on the portal under Scott Frost. We'll talk about that next, right here, Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. It tracks all your subscriptions in one spot and can help cancel the ones you don't need with just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending so you can actually see where your money is going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. It just makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Get your money up. Locked On UCF fans, we have a deal for you. It's the Everydayer Club. Head on over to lockedonucf.supercast.com to get signed up today. Everydayers get an ad-free feed of the show. You also get access to a private Discord where you can chop it up with other UCF fans just like yourself. All that we ask that you do is listen, but if you want to go a step further in supporting the work that we're doing here, you can sign up for the Everydayer Club. It's only $5 a month, and that $5 helps guarantee that we can continue to cover your UCF Knights at a high level. Myself, Kyle, James, all at that final practice there at the Bounce House. It was a lot of fun, man, but travel ain't free, Kyle. So we appreciate you guys signing up to help us stay the #1 UCF podcast. Let's jump into our second segment, which is the portal. I think the portal is going to remain important, extremely important, until you can establish a good high school recruiting base. Obviously, Scott Frost is familiar with the recruiting ground, but he's got to reestablish recruiting relationships in the region with the new high school coaches, with the recruits. Look, man, it's changed. The landscape has changed a little bit since he's been gone, and you are now in the Big 12. So the schools that you need to out recruit it's just harder. It's harder now than when you were in the American. Now, what you have to sell is opportunity to a lot of these guys in the portal. The portal gave you Alonza Barnett.
Yeah.
And, in the past, that may not have been possible without the portal. But, where do you see the program headed? Is UCF always going to be that school where they're looking for their best players in the portal, or are we quickly headed toward a time where UCF is able to farm those guys out of high school?
Yeah, I think the portal is always going to be at least somewhat a factor, right? You don't always have a Hawaii quarterback pipeline to bail you out. Of course, I'm making a Scott Frost 1.0 reference there. I have to be clear that I think UCF will be in a place where they'll need the portal to kind of sprinkle in extra elements, less because of the high school recruiting situation, such as we talked about, but more because UCF still at that place where they're going to get outbid often by dudes that do show out, right? I think that's something I'd hate to call it like a feeder school for other elements of the power conferences out there, but I think that's a thing, right? That being said, I think the one part I'd like to see UCF use less portal if possible, if they can avoid, Mike, the phenomenon that I talked about players getting bought, right, is on the offensive line. Like we talked about development of the quarterbacks. I want to see more young beef. It would be great if this is the last year where only one returner was a starting lineman last year. Right? That's the piece I want to see be different first and foremost in the portal. Listen, guys get hurt playing linebacker. You might need a portal to, kind of refresh and getting things out. Your body gets banged up. We saw some elements of the defense, missing throughout camp just because they're recovering from injury and that sort of thing. That makes sense. But for me, the offensive line needs to be another concentration of development where I'd like to see less portal, because at day's end, it feels to me like corner is an easier thing to sub in and sub out than anything else. I've literally heard a professional football coach this week say that very thing in the Orlando Storm's Anthony Becht, right? That's where you use the portal, is where it's easier for a guy to come in. The running back position, the same is alleged to be true on the offensive side. But those positions where you need that cohesion or you need time to study, like quarterback and O-line, is where I'd like to see them pull back from the portal. But to your point, it's not going away, and I love using it to revamp your defense.
You said something that I want to expound on before we move on, and that's about quarterback. You cannot find yourself in a position, Kyle, where you are consistently in the portal looking for a starting quarterback.
Right.
You take the best guy available if he wants to come compete. But that should be a tough proposition if you're recruiting and identifying talent well from the high school level, and those guys are developing. There shouldn't be a guy that's going to come in from the portal and feel super confident that he can come in and beat out Rocco Marriott. Honestly, if I'm being honest, right, it should not be that easy. He should think, oh man, if I go there, I'm gonna have to compete with that Rocco kid because they really like him and he stepped up. But and I say this because in the few programs that I cover, it's become a storyline where you have some young incumbent that we really like, but he's been sitting and patiently waiting his turn. And then some guy comes in, maybe not even from a top tier program, but he's been getting tape while you've been sitting and waiting your turn at UCF. And it's easier maybe to evaluate what someone has put on tape in a real game versus what you're doing in practice. And if you're Scott Frost, you have to, at some point, give your guy in practice the edge and not get distracted by this shiny new thing in the portal at quarterback every portal season.
Didn't we just see that with Jakari Brown and Cam Fancher, right?
Yeah. Or KJ Jefferson?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, another good point, Mike.
Would you have been better off going with an incumbent than bringing him in, and he didn't make it to mid-season? They paid him a lot of money to sit him. I mean, obviously that was Gus. That's not Scott. But my point is that you can destroy your program chasing a quarterback in the portal year after year after year. Develop them. Stop chasing and develop. So I'm all about the portal. I think it can help you fill some key needs from time to time. But development still is the name of the game, and you got to do that with your high school guys. Look, let's get to our last segment. I want to talk about the guy who they did bring in from the portal that everybody's talking about, and it's Alonza Barnett. Mm-hmm. We got a little bit of intel. We'll check on him right here next on Locked On UCF. Sources tell me, Mike G here at Locked On UCF, Alonza Barnett is A-OK. Made me smile from ear to ear. I love to hear it. A lot of questions in that final practice when we got to talk to all the quarterbacks. Alonza came and stepped up and said, hey, man, I'm all right. I'm here. I'm okay. Guys, it was something that UCF knew about. I knew about. An abundance of caution was being exercised around Alonza Barnett.
Right.
When it came to his health this spring, and he feels like he's in a good place for the summer. And my source tells me that everybody in the program feels like he's in a great place for the summer. And they, as a program, feel like they managed that as well as could. Look, it didn't satisfy the fan thirst for Alonza, but
right.
Who cares? If you're winning football games in the fall. Like, I mean, I wanted to see him personally, but you know what? Screw us. Go win on Saturdays, because that's the thing we're going to really kill you for if you can't win and he's not available.
And listen, as much as, and which shouts to you and James for the conversation about you had about Dillon Gabriel, but you do realize he won the name starter. Forget about spring and summer, not even a week one. So, yeah, okay. Now, granted, I expect Alonza Barnett to be the starter in week one. Yes, obviously, yes, utilizing Dillon as an example is hyperbole. But, yeah, I'm with you, man. Listen, spring may not and sometimes does not matter, right? We've talked about springs where Mikey Keene was definitely the dude. And then we have to watch Wolverine in the background for a while before Malachi Lawrence be the picture of John Rice Plumlee there, right? These are all things that were decided and occurred through spring and beyond, man. Spring is important. I know we preach the importance of it. It's an important part of the development piece. But I think the thing that Scott Frost 2.0 here has done their best to teach us, and I say their best because I mean the entire coaching staff, not just Coach Frost, but Coach Beckett, Coach Milton. See, I didn't call him KZ. I'm starting to get professional there, Mike. Coach Milton, Coach Cooper, all of the offensive guys have told us we're relying on the experience to bring him in smoothly. So to see your source kind of land that plane and confirm that the plan's working is the best thing UCF fans should get, and I think it will uplift them just a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, I'm very careful about the things that we report, that we get told. It is a very, very short trail from legitimate information to the people who tell you they're not supposed to be telling you. But the positive stuff I think should be shared. And right now, Alonza Barnett being in good shape for the summer is something I feel like should be screened from the mountaintops, because it speaks to how well they managed this spring. And that is your job. Your job is to get Alonza Barnett to game one. I'll say it again for the people in the back. Get Alonza Barnett to game one. That's Bethune-Cookman, September 3rd. If he doesn't roll out there, you're going to be you have a lot of things to explain here. So his health should be priority number one, and finding an offensive line that can protect him should be a close 1B.
Yeah. Let me even add this, Mike, too, because for all the talk you mentioned about Malachi Lawrence as an example in a good marketing campaign, air quotes, that you can get to the league, how about Alonza Barnett being a marketing campaign about how much this coaching staff actually cares about the health of their players. Right? That's a conversation you and I have talked about, that fine line that we see at times, but when it comes to players and them needing to be on the field versus watching for their health. This coaching staff has made it clear that they will look after you and care about your development and health as you develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, UCF's got to win some football games in the fall. That's what it boils down to. And so if you want to win football games this season and beyond, you got to recruit well from high school. You got to get your fair share from the portal, and you got to find a QB year after year. In today's college football, if you don't have a QB, you're cooked. You're absolutely cooked. And I think that has been the Achilles heel of UCF football the last few years, at least offensively. Great conversation, Kyle Nash, senior writer, UCFKnightZone.com. Head on over to UCFKnightZone.com, where you'll find his written work, as well as Andrew Gluchov, and you'll find me there from time to time. That site is owned by us. So we want you to get your word of the day from UCF, not only here on the podcast, but also in written form as well, too, where you'll find links to this show. We're going to go ahead and sign out. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day, and for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there, guys. We'll be back at you guys tomorrow with more Locked On UCF.